Okay. Greetings, everybody. Okay. Hoping everybody's having a good day, enjoying life, living life, loving life. I have to give my apologies on that last Zoom we did. Somehow the first session of it did not get recorded. So where we were talking about the durable power of attorney in fact and the other types of attorneys, that part got it. I lost it somehow. So we'll start out with that tonight, basically just a quick rundown because it's actually pretty simple in regards to the 4 different types. And so we don't really want to spend too much time, but I want to explain it just a little bit further here in regards to executor, administrator, and things like that. So that's what we'll be starting out with.
Good day.
Greetings. Okay. Sorry there, guys. I was just reading up on some full faith and credit on the local level. As I was saying just before we got started here, my apologies for last night's Zoom. Somehow I lost the first part of it, and we ended up opening the room for a second Zoom, a bonus session. And somehow in that process, I lost the first Zoom part. And basically what it was, we discussed the durable power of attorney in fact, and how important that is to get that set up, and the difference between that, the general powers of attorney, specific powers of attorney, and springing powers of attorney. And what I'll do for this Zoom is I'll write up a little thing explaining that and drop that in the chat section of the bonus session Zoom that did post, because I have no other way of recouping that except to just make a comment explaining it in text form. That way we don't have to redo the whole Zoom. But anyway, in regards to that durable power of attorney in fact, it is so that we can establish our own private estate. Everything that's running in regards to estate matters today, in all those documents and everything in the courts and the hospital and any school papers, all of it. They're just documents, but they're in their system, and that means their system being a probate system, it says that there's no will, and that's why they're the fiduciary. They have to assert the will of community care, and sometimes that doesn't work out so well. And that's the basics of a probate system. Is that things are assumed to be abandoned because the instruments aren't properly accepted, endorsed, and whatnot. And so tonight we're going to talk about the importance of that durable power of attorney in fact, which is a statement of capacity of your own self. It's taking back your powers. It's a stating of your competency and your sound mind and your age and your experience and wisdom to know that things need to be done a certain way. And that's it. There is no assignment in that durable power of attorney. The assignments come through general powers of attorney and specific assignments of attorney. And those are the things that we use to instrumentalize our trust property or move our trust property. We want to keep it private, so we shouldn't be using public documents. And that's the intent of the durable power of attorney in fact, is to take control of the public documents. Now, what you do from that point on is up to you. You can do the secured party creditor, you can do the UCC, you can do the 1099s, you can do the accepted for value, as long as you know those processes. But to try to do those processes without first maintaining the durable power of attorney so nobody else can assume those powers, you're going to end up in problems. But I highly recommend that you don't even mess with it, because your greater credit is by assessing the actual value of everything that they claim is out there in probate in your name and drawing it all back. Those are all bonds, and you have the right to what's called accelerate the bonds. In other words, call them all in. Those are all those vessels floating around out there without the captains or without the proper directives. You're going to call them all back in, and you're going to offload all that cargo for the value that's left in it and transfer it to the private estate. That's what you do. Once that acceleration is done and it's brought back, now you can start making the assignments of the assets. And those assets include the physical assets, the values of them, the intangible assets of requirements in the future that you might need some kind of medical assistance. You've got to have contingency for that, but those can all be done by certain powers assigned for financial, certain powers assigned for medical, certain powers assigned for education. And again, this is why I stressed, and it's very important when you start picking out your trustees, you know their character and their asset in being able to assign them specific points of attorney. You know, somebody that's an accountant, that would be the one that you would want to assign for your finances. You don't want to assign him for your medical. He's better at accounting. So you find somebody in your family that's a nurse or a doctor, you assign them your medical. And this is how it works. We all have people in our family that we know are lawyers, doctors, teachers, artists, everything. We all know those kind of people. We have to get to know and trust certain people in those characteristics, but we've got to make sure we trust them as a man first, because they might be a great guy, but they might also be a shitty person.
Okay, can I ask you a question?
You bet.
I know earlier you had said something about that you needed to do your private stuff before you basically fooled around with the UCC. So what is the private stuff that you need to do? But I really don't want to fool with the UCC. Everybody else likes to do
That's
that. I'm one of those that I feel like you shouldn't even have to do that.
That's what we're doing right now, is defining the powers. And in defining the powers, that first element is, your age of majority, declaratory judgment, your powers of attorneys, foreign status. It's basically a status arrangement where in there, you're going to name that durable power of attorney. You're going to revoke all the other powers, and you now accept your status as the settler of all accounts through that durable power of attorney. You're the one that makes all those decisions in all matters.
Okay, so how do you do that as far as your durable power of attorney? You just write them a letter, and who does the letter go to?
What we're going to do is we're going to issue a durable power of attorney with the other elements through our process of fixing that certificate of live birth, or whatever. In my companion's case, she was actually a public educator, so she's got what's known as an IPERS, Iowa Public Employees Retirement Service, and they created a 401k bond for her. So we're going to recall that, as well as her certificate of live birth, for anything that IPERS didn't cover while she was a teacher. Certain things like when she was a student, all that stuff, all those papers can be withdrawn from the public now. She's no longer public. She's retired. She now has the ability to go to the private side and pull everything with her. And they can't deny that. They can't say that she's required to have any licenses whatsoever, including a driver license.
So isn't it okay? So if she retired, then wouldn't it be best to just retire, and then basically you could go out into the private?
But you're still using their public instruments. What we're doing is getting rid of all those public instruments. Right, she's allowed to operate through a credit system, which operates electronically. And it's already got the assignments done. There is no confusion on a local level when they enter it into their system. I'll be damned if it doesn't go to another system that says, you can't enter it at that port. It's not an electronic export information. You're not supposed to have that information.
So shouldn't you? Okay, so let me ask you this. I was reading over some stuff this morning, and it was talking about Title 15 is what we need to be doing as a Title 15, and getting ready and getting rid of everything. Basically, it's going to put us back into a different status.
Right. Okay, we're going to take that banker's acceptance that I'm talking about, and we're going to convert it to a trade acceptance, because now we've converted it to a land warrant and transferred that land warrant title to the Postal Service, and they're the ones that have to verify everything now.
So you're going to turn the banker's acceptance into a who acceptance?
We're going to do the banker's acceptance on that, but in our conversion, we're now going to switch to trade acceptances. Doesn't nothing verify unless it's a trade acceptance. Now, once it's a trade acceptance, now if we want to perform some kind of commercial securities transaction on it, we can hand it to a banker and monetize it or dollarize it.
Okay, so let me ask you this. What exactly do I need to do first? Do I need to go ahead and do the 15? Or there's something else I wanted to ask you about that I ran into. That's another thing. I can't remember what it was.
Well, aren't you the one that works for the Postal Service?
No, I'm the one that was driving trucks for the Postal Service and ran into that mountain. That's who I am. Okay. I'm the one that, a 1099 CAP.
A 1099 what?
1099, C as in cat, A as in apple, P as in Paul, cap.
Keith, may I?
Oh, my. Sure.
Hi. Hi, assemblers. So it seems to me like maybe the first step for me is changing the location of the debtor, which is a change of address for the franchise public instrument.
Well, look what it says right here, Lori. This is the form she's talking about. Everybody's familiar with the 1099A and the 1099B and the 1099C and 1099 OID and the 1096 cover sheet. Well, right. This first I've heard of the 1099 CAP, which is
I was researching that yesterday. I read that Patrick Devine talks about that. So I was reading up on that, and then he was talking about the Title 15 we needed to do. So that's what
Right.
I
See,
want to
that's
ask you
the
about the
corporate.
1099 cap.
See, that's the
So-
difference in the capital structure. See, our capital structure is no longer a banking structure. It's a trade structure.
Mm-hmm.
And we no longer need a banker's license. This is what I tried to, I didn't know where he was coming from with this. I never talked to him about this, but I talked to Patrick Devine a couple times and I discussed it with him. I said, the way you're operating as if though you're going to use a license. You're going for the broker's Series 7's license. You shouldn't need that. That's a banking operation. If you're truly doing a trade acceptance,
I
you
believe
should
that's
realize
because
it's
he
different than a
believed it.
banker's acceptance.
I think that's because he believed that. Well, he did say it. He said that he believed what the whole system was about banking. But on me, I know it's a different. Like it's basically based off of transportation and trading. Because when I took that custom broker course, when he sent me over on that website, the Federal Trade Commission and all of that was over there. So I'm like, this has got to do with transportation and trading, because basically what they're doing is trading us.
Right. And see, what happens is the trade environment operates as a trade environment. And that's two people that create a value of exchange. And it doesn't matter what the items of exchange are. It could be a tangible for an intangible. It can be a tangible for a tangible, an intangible for an intangible, whatever. That's up to them. That's the trade acceptance. The banker's acceptance is the internal use within a private membership association of a valuation system that allows for conversion for the internal exchanges in commercial paper.
See, don't you think that that's the reason why it's important to change the location of the debtor so that it's no longer under their jurisdiction, like the first step?
Yes.
Okay. Because, it would.
So when she's talking about changing the debtor, what exactly do you mean?
I wasn't done. So in the
UCC,
I'm
saying, can you explain it to me?
Yeah, if you go to the UCC 9 and you type in location of the debtor, because the debtor is the franchise bankrupt organization in the United States. It's a trust, and that's a certificate for public charitable trust. Okay, which without doing a qualified signature, going through and doing blank endorsements, what it does is the man or woman then becomes as acting in a trustee position because it's not qualified. Like with certain signatures that's laid out in the UCC, what that does is it's unambiguous. Like I am the agent, I'm not going to be held responsible. And so part of that responsibility is saying, hey, wait, I'm not the trustee, I'm the living beneficiary of this public trust in accordance with the Trading with the Enemy Act and, even the war powers. And changing the location removes that particular juridic entity, that business, from what's outside of their jurisdiction. That's what it does. Because a lot of people don't recognize that in address, when they put their address using that military name, the nom de guerre name, that is actually a fixture. It's considered property. It's a trademark name that's in commerce that needs to be removed from their jurisdiction. And that's done through the post office. Yep. And that particular fixture is left at a lot of places, like the hospital, at universities, at schools, at banks. So it's removing them, and that's the conveyance of property from the public into the private by having an account with them. And it literally shows a movement where then the UPU acts as a trustee for that. They're literally the go-between, because they're the biggest bank on the realm and in the world. I yield.
Exactly. And that's what we're talking about here. I was telling the guys I'm going to start out with the Trust Indenture Act of 1939, because our monetary system, the commercial paper, fiat currency, is based in trust purely. And that's why every instrument has to have the symbolism of trust. That's why they're supposed to have those raised seals and stuff like that on the documents. These bopping them with an ink stamper doesn't count. Okay. The thing with the Trust Indenture Act is, like Lori said, we're operating in a capacity as the agent for the bank. And the bank is also part of a trust on the international level. And when we walk into that bank, the bank sees us as an agent that has been authorized to act as the principal. In the bank's mind, the principal is the money of account, which is an obligation of the United States. It's all their debt instruments. So when we walk into a bank and we're using their debt instruments, we're being seen as the principal through authorization of an agent, as an agent by giving that signature. Every time we give that signature, we're seen as the principal of the money of account. That's what we need to correct. And we have to know the difference, that we're not signing in that capacity. That's why we need to start realizing how to endorse for special deposit. The Trust Indenture Act, the way it works is we've got the United States as an obligated for all those trust instruments. The state is supposed to act as the trustee, and we are supposed to be, as Lori said, the live beneficiary. But at age 18, we sign up for Social Security to be an agent, instead of clarifying that we want everything removed from probate, including all educational records and everything like that, and put into a private estate. That's what we're supposed to be doing at 18. Age of majority, clarifying our capabilities and our competence. Otherwise, we are deemed in legal concept throughout our life, not taking care of these, to be incompetent automatically.
If I may add there for a minute too, Keith, is like the age of majority is also the age of discretion, which is being able to comprehend really the real banking system, which is the UCC, and how to use it properly for our benefit, like equitable. Because that's the problem with the public charitable trust, is that it's called bifurcation. It's a split title. So the idea is that they're holding what's supposed to be the legal title, which makes them the have fiduciary duties. Okay. But what they've done is and we're supposed to have the equitable title, the right of use. But what they've done is they've switched the positions. So that's the importance of the Treating with the Enemy Act, to return that certificate to the proper alien custodian. So what it does at that point is it merges, it's called the merger doctrine, and it collapses that public charitable trust. But in order to do that, there needs to be another structure set up. And that's the whole idea. Because it's gone from, like commercial paper and everything's electronic. Now it's book entry, T-ledgering, generally acceptable accounting practices. And that's also can be done at the post office. And then what it could,
this is the entire concept of a developing country. It is, in fact, just like a bankruptcy. At the same time, they use the same terminology: merger, confirmed plan to reorganize, new name. Is that not all biblical anyway? That's where they get it all. And it's that simple.
So Keith, just if you don't mind with me adding this one last thing, is the retiring as the agent for the service of process. Because the person who is registered as the service of process for that debtor franchise banking, all caps name, that person has the trustee position. But it was like, for me, it was intended for me to be the beneficiary. They're the custodians of the property. They're the ones who have the duties and the obligations to perform.
And I'll explain it. The obligation isn't indentured yet. That's why I say when you file that SS5, that's not an indenture in the proper form. What happens is that's a contract for you to operate as an agent in certain capacities. So when we remove that, that's the state is holding custody, and they are by appointment. Now, when we get that certificate of live birth from the custodian of records, we do the proper banker's acceptance, which includes making an assignment for the conversion. That's what people are failing. It needs to be reconverted. So we have to state our interest, the conversion, and then the redelivery with the assignment. We're going to deliver it back to them with the proper assignment. Now they are truly known and recorded and identified as the trustee and not just a mere general appointment.
Right, because, right, Keith, a trustee will not want for a lack of, the trust will not fail for a lack of trustee. And so once the position is known, which cap we're wearing, then it's our duty to say, hey, you're not doing a good job, I fire you. And these are the reasons why you're being fired, because, you know, breach of
Correct.
Trust, lack of performance to the beneficiary, or to say,
Lack
hey,
of faith.
lack of good faith. Number one, lack of good faith. That's number one.
And before we get to that, I want to go over this real quick here, because this is what we're talking about right here. They're dealing with a public estate. All of that in that public estate is public. But it works against your private estate, because just like a T ledger, you have a public estate and a private estate. It's not an account of balances. Everything has to be removed from this side and put in this side for it to balance appropriately to nature. He is a respecter of no persons. And I guarantee you, the first time you think you're going to make a confirmed plan to spend $50 million after this redemption thing to build this big old church, he's going to laugh. So make sure you know what you're doing in removing everything from probate, because that is a false will. False will. It is the will of another man being opposed against a private entity by posing it in a public forum in a negative manner, in a personage. Again, he's a respecter of no persons. If you post anything about my name and my good name in your public domain, you better make it speak good of him. Otherwise, if you're using it in any kind of commercial aspect, you will be had, I assure you. And it takes no insurance. You might require it, but we don't.
Okay, so we shouldn't have a bank account, right?
No, you should have an electronic credit account.
Yeah.
Master trust account, where they will balance all out of balance accounts within 3 days, because they have a responsibility to research and resolve.
Okay, so how do you get the electronic account?
Postal One.
Postal One? Oh, you talking about doing the site, right?
Yes. Everything's being converted to electronic. You set up a master trust account with the Postal One, like they say, it's an electronic form. And everything has to, now we're not dealing with 4 months, or every 3 months, every quarter, or once a year to balance the account, every 3 days. Does that sound like contract terms? So if a fraudulent contract comes through and it's known as a fraudulent contract because it hasn't cleared customs first, in other words, if it tries to come through this side, sorry, immigration's going to catch you. Electronic immigration is going to catch you. It's all in the programming.
And that's the important part about having a customer registration ID and a MID, is because a lot of people think when they're sending correspondences that the sticker makes the registered, but it isn't. The sticker is just the insurance on the securities that's being transferred. But when one has a business account, whether it's a church that's a faith-based union nonprofit, it's not acting in commerce, it's just here to do the will of the Father who art in heaven, then it's not taxable. And it's a way to literally send correspondences to the places where the debtor was left and to transfer them back into the private. And there's the trustees, the UPU, the inspector general would step in if anyone tried to say, well, we didn't get these records or they weren't transferred.
And I just posted this comment in the chat section. It says, what is an estate? An estate is everything comprising the net worth of an individual, including all land and real estate, possessions, financial securities, cash, and other assets that the individual owns or has a controlling interest in. That certificate of live birth is an asset that you have a controlling interest in. And this is what we need to realize. We have to control that in the proper manner so we can then convey it for a land warrant, which would then be exchanged a certain sum value for a certain parcel of land somewhere for redemption purposes. None of your business. It's no longer for conservation or environment. It's private. Period. That's our goal. And it's done peacefully.
So basically we're trying to get them to like give us the land because we weren't supposed to be selling land or buying it. Period.
Right. We're going to reconvert it. We're going to reconvert it. We're going to call back, accelerate all the bonds in that monetary system for the value that they say it has. We're going to do a proper banker's acceptance on that and then do a special deposit into that private investment trust, which is the master trust account. Everything that goes through there, through that credit account must pass scrutiny. It must be perfect. Any errors, it goes back.
See,
I'm trying to get them to give me
that's
mine
important
now.
That's the importance of the UCC.
Right. And then we use our organization on that drawdown account to purchase the land. Guess what? That land that account purchased, he purchased it and then gave it to you as a donation. It gets zeroed out. So we no longer have to worry about the purchase price of land or anything, whatever they want. Here's the credit account to draw off of it. It gets resolved in 3 days.
I'm trying to get my land now, Keith.
Well, that's the importance of having an account and transferring it's like importing and exporting through the post office because it has to do with the numbers, claiming the numbers, because it's really like, it's all about numbers. It's a numbers game.
Yep.
Which is really crazy, but it's true. It actually really is. And, so some people do the UCC 1 to claim the interest in those numbers and they put a lien on it that way. It shows in the commercial world that there's a lien on it.
Yeah, and that's still just a commercial lien. And that's what we're going to do when we pull everything out of probate. There's no more commercial liens, folks. We're taking it into what's called a sacred lien. That's that maritime lien they talk about. The maritime lien is not a commercial lien. It is the sacred lien. And they call it a maritime lien because they know we recognize the maritime element. Everything's got to be got by contract. And I'll be damned. I've already got a covenant with the king of contracts.
Well, and that's interesting too when you go back to the history of what maritime and admiralty came from. It was the royal king's court and queen's court. And it's how they made the concurrent jurisdictions. And so it's really important, like for me, to realize that everything that I do comes from a place of my faith in my creator, and that all those are like, I'm not allowed to be engaged in commerce. So any contract that's involved is like, it's not a commercial enterprise. It's like the parable of the talents, right, Keith?
Yes. You got to go forth with your 5 talents, come back with 10. If you're taking one talent and burying it, you're not doing this for replenishing.
Right. And so that's the whole point. Like, here we've been, for me, I'll speak for me. I've been stumbling around in the realm, on the realm and in the world, not knowing. But what I was doing in all of my acts, because the Torah is on my heart, is I was actually adding to the res. And, I was listening to a gentleman named, he goes by some dude, Boris, which you've been invited to, Keith. I'd like to talk with you about that. They want you to come in to present in that Zoom. But the whole thing is like, peace-loving men and women from Yah are not going to create a system that they've created. So the biggest servant of Yah is actually Satan and his minions, because they're so cold and calculating. And it's designed for us.
A process is what is key. And if they can convert the process, then nothing else matters. And that's what I'm trying to convince everybody. Nothing in their system matters. It's the process. You have to change the process. And before we get too far here, I put some comments in the chat section about material to review in regards to this. And the first thing is, like I said, what is an estate? And we started out talking about the trust indenture and how to assign things. We see here there are different elements in regards to obligations and records and full faith and expenses and all that. And this is why I say we've got to realize who we need to make notices to. These are all from different areas of the code. 31 U.S. code is the money and banking. And it says payment of obligation and interest on the public debt. In there it says, the faith of the United States government is pledged to pay. And that means we have to acquisition it. We have to indenture it. Trust Indenture Act. We have to contract with them. That contract has not been made. It's only been assumed. Then it talks about 28 U.S. Code, which is titled Judiciary and Judicial Procedure. Now, the judicial procedure is the administration, whereas the actual judicial courts are the postal courts. The district courts are all administrative courts of the judicial system. So they answer to that judicial system. And this is proven by the Postmaster General being the one that regulates the judicial system itself. And that's why you see the Board of Contract Appeals at the post office or through the Postal Service. And this one here talks about state and territorial non-judicial records, full faith and credit. Title 39 talks about the expenses incidental to transfer of title to the Postal Service. Once we transfer that title to the Postal Service in that master trust account, that is an advance credit account. And you assign it to them to use whatever they need to use for credits, but it's done as a donation. Therefore, they get their pay in Federal Reserve notes, but the credits get returned. It's a zero balance drawdown account. You don't lose. They get paid in their fictional, fake bullshit money system, and it's properly assigned. Go ahead and play your Monopoly game. Play your silly servitude BS. I don't care. I'm not part of it anymore.
So that's the Trading with the Enemy Act, right? That's the one where everyone's trying to, they keep trying to, Secretary of State, and it works because other people can use it, but it doesn't really settle the matter, truly, 100%.
Exactly.
And so,
and
which one did you say that it was? Keith, I'm sorry.
39 CFR 777.33. These are all in the comments, and I'll post them in the comments when I post the video as well.
Okay, can I ask you a question? Since I'm already in a position to where they may just be giving me access to my land, so what exactly do I need to kind of like protect myself, and what do I need to do?
We're going to do a process where we're going to revocate the powers of attorney by asserting the durable powers of attorney and mentioning that revocation. We're going to clarify all of our status and standing and everything for a private estate. And just
as a general executrix, right? As a general executrix.
Right.
That's really, of the estate. Living beneficiary of the trust, general
grantee
of the
estate. Grantee, because the executor or executrix realize that happens when somebody is deceased and you execute their will. When you're executing your own will, it's actually a grant. And what you do when you grant something.
Wait a sec, ma'am. He was answering the question. You could just hold on, please. What were you saying, Keith?
When you realize it as the grantee position, once you grant something, you no longer have title to it. The grant is a passing of a title to a trustee and the possession of the actual property to a beneficiary. And that's all it takes.
See, that's the problem. But see, that's the problem. The debtor can't make its own will. So that's why the power of attorney is handed over.
Correct.
Okay.
And so when we see this thing is in regards to the post office, the judicial system, and the money in banking, check this out. That last one is 42 CFR, which is your medical providers, public health, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, Department of Health and Human Services, subchapter Medicare program, Medicare Advantage program, subpart E, relationships with providers. And then they say a preclusion list for contracted and non-contracted individual entities. They admit there are contracted and non-contracted individual entities. If it is a non-contracted individual entity, it cannot be a trustee because those trustee assignments could not possibly have been made. So therefore, if you have never been actually assigned as trustee,